Imagine opening your laptop in the middle of a war zone and seeing your entire marriage end in a PDF file. 11 years together, gone with the subject line. Let's be adults about this. No warning, no explanation. Just betrayal wrapped in a 3-sentence email. But here's the twist. What she didn't know was that I was already 2 steps ahead. And when I came home, I didn't just take back my life. I exposed a scheme that ruined hers. My name is David. I was 45 years old when my marriage ended. Not with a fight, not with a long conversation, not even with tears. It ended with a PDF file. I was 4 months into a deployment in Kandahar, Afghanistan, with the 82nd Airborne when it happened. That day had been like any other. Dust in the air so thick it coated your throat. The smell of diesel from the Humvees hanging heavy. The kind of heat that makes metal too hot to touch. My shift had been long, exhausting, but manageable. You learn to live with discomfort in the desert. What you don't learn to live with is betrayal. I'd finished chow, powdered eggs, burnt coffee, and gone back to my laptop to check in on the outside world. Nothing unusual. A couple of messages from my sister, one from an old army buddy. Then I saw it, an email from my wife, Becky. The subject line. Let's be adults about this. For a second, I thought it was a joke. Something about bills, maybe a problem with the utilities. I clicked it open, expecting some little domestic issue from home. Instead, I was staring at 3 sentences that detonated my life. David, I've already filed the divorce papers. I've moved on, and I need you to respect that. I've already emptied the accounts and moved Jeremy in. Let's be adults about this. Attached to the email was a PDF file. Divorce paperwork. Cold, clinical, like an HR memo. 11 years of marriage. Boiled down into an attachment. I read it twice. My brain refused to process the words. Divorce emptied the accounts. Jeremy. Who the hell was Jeremy? My hands didn't shake. My breathing didn't spike. No outburst. No yelling in the middle of the barracks. Instead, it was like my body went hollow. As if someone had reached inside me and scooped everything out, leaving only silence. I closed the laptop. Walked to the communal showers. Let the cold water hit me. Scrubbed the grit from my skin until it stung. Then I dried off, dressed, and went on shift like nothing happened. Not a word to anyone. When I came back to my bunk that night, I sat on the edge of my cot, opened the laptop again, and typed one word back. Understood. That was it. No begging, no bargaining, no threats, just one word. Because if there's one thing the Army teaches you, it's discipline. You don't fire until you've aimed. Wilson, my bunkmate, noticed. He was stretched out reading some dog-eared paperback. He glanced up. You good, man? He asked, his voice casual, not pressing. Yeah, I said. Just some stuff back home. He nodded once and went back to his book. That was it. Military guys know when to leave things alone. In war, privacy is rare, but when it comes, you respect it. But the truth was, I wasn't surprised. Looking back, I should have known. 6 months before deployment, things had shifted in subtle ways. Becky stopped asking about my day, stopped caring about the little things. Her nights at the dental office stretched later and later. She suddenly found a love for the gym, though I never saw any sweat on her clothes. New outfits, new friends I'd never met. Her phone always face down, passwords changed. I wasn't blind, I just wasn't confrontational. My dad always taught me, don't speak unless you're sure. Don't act unless you're ready. So I didn't check her phone. I didn't follow her. That's not who I am. But I did start making quiet moves of my own. I pulled important documents and put them in a storage unit across town. My birth certificate, the deed to the house, my military benefits, paperwork. I took my grandfather's watch, my mom's old silver, tucked them away safe. I opened a new bank account, started funneling part of my pay there. Not so much that Becky would notice, but enough that if the worst came, I wouldn't be left with nothing. Some part of me must have known. The night before I deployed, Becky hugged me at the airport. Told me, stay safe. Okay. Her voice was flat, her eyes dry, like she was saying goodbye to a coworker, not her husband heading into a war zone. I should have known then, but a soldier learns to hope too. Hope keeps you alive when nothing else does. So I clung to the possibility that maybe I was wrong, that maybe stress had gotten to her, and we'd figure it out when I came home. I wasn't wrong. That email in the desert wasn't just a message, it was an execution, a clean shot to the chest. No warning, no mercy. But here's the part Becky didn't understand. I don't start fights, not my style, but when someone pushes me into one, I finish them. And so, sitting there in the dark of the barracks, desert wind rattling the tin roof, I wasn't just a betrayed husband anymore. I was a soldier on a new kind of mission, a personal one. I didn't know how yet, I didn't know when, but I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over. This part digs into the subtle decline of the marriage, the red flags, the emotional distance, and Becky's transformation. The goal is to make the audience feel David's growing unease, frustration, and quiet heartbreak, while also setting up moral justification for his revenge later. Betrayal doesn't usually happen in a single moment. It starts small, so small you almost convince yourself you imagined it. With Becky, the signs came slowly, like hairline cracks in a windshield. At first you don't notice. Then one day the light catches it just right, and you realize the whole thing is splintered. 6 months before deployment, Becky began to change. At first, I thought it was stress. She worked admin at a dental office, answering phones, handling paperwork. Nothing glamorous, but stable. She used to come home tired but cheerful, telling me about difficult patients or office gossip. Then the story stopped. She'd come through the door, drop her bag, and retreat into silence. When I asked how her day was, her answers grew shorter. Fine, busy, same old. It was a small thing, but when you've been with someone more than a decade, you feel it, like a shift in gravity. Then there were the nights. She started staying late at work. At first, once or twice a week. Then 3. Then, almost every night. Dr. Collins needs help with the books, she explained one evening, slipping out of her heels in the hallway. I nodded, though something in her tone was too smooth, too rehearsed. You're just answering phones though. Since when do you do accounting? I asked. She shot me a quick glance, then smiled. Everyone's picking up extra. It's a team thing. I wanted to believe her. I really did. The gym came next. 3 times a week, Becky announced she was joining a fitness program. Melissa does it, she said, one of her friends I'd never met. It's good for stress. I supported her. Bought her new sneakers, asked her how it was going. But when I touched the laundry basket later that week, I noticed her gym clothes didn't smell like sweat. Not once. They were folded, crisp, as if they'd gone straight from the bag back into the wash. When I asked how the workouts were going, she shrugged. Fine. I don't know if I like this instructor. A lie. I could hear it in the hesitation. Her phone became the biggest red flag. Becky had never been secretive. She used to leave her phone on the kitchen counter, buzzing with texts from friends. Sometimes she'd even ask me to reply for her if her hands were full. But now, the phone was always face down, always locked. She changed the password. When I asked why, she snapped. Work stuff. HIPAA laws. I can't risk anyone seeing patient info. Reasonable enough, if I were stupid, but I'm not. Still, I didn't confront her. That's not who I am. The Army had taught me to observe before acting, to gather intelligence, confirm patterns, prepare. Charging in half-cocked gets people killed. In marriage, it gets people destroyed. So instead of accusing, I adapted. I rented a small storage unit across town. Into it, I placed everything that mattered. My grandfather's watch, my mom's old silver, photo albums, my military paperwork. I pulled the deed to our house from the safe, locked it away. VA loans are under the service member's name alone. She couldn't touch that without me. And quietly, I opened a second bank account at a different branch. Each paycheck, I skimmed off a piece. Not so much that Becky would notice, just enough that if things went south, I'd have a lifeline. I didn't tell her. I didn't tell anyone. It wasn't paranoia, it was precaution. Our conversations grew fewer, sharper. Do you ever think about getting a real job? She asked one night, out of nowhere. I looked up from cleaning my gear. A real job. You know what I mean, something stable. Something where you're not gone for months at a time. I've been in the Army 15 years. Becky, this is my career. She sighed, shaking her head. I didn't sign up to be a military wife. I'm tired of being alone. Her words hit me harder than I let on. I get it, I said carefully, but people depend on me. The Army's where I belong. She didn't answer. She just stared past me at the TV, eyes glassy, already someplace else. I told myself she was just restless, that deployments were hard on her, that once I came back, things would settle down. But in my gut, I knew. The week before I shipped out, she packed me a lunch for the airport, a sandwich, some chips, a soda. She hugged me at the gate, kissed my cheek, and said, "Stay safe." Her voice was flat, her eyes dry. It wasn't the farewell of a wife who was terrified her husband was heading into danger. It was the perfunctory goodbye of someone who had already let go. I boarded that plane with my heart heavy but my mind clear. Something was wrong. And if there's one thing war has taught me, it's this. When your gut tells you danger is coming, believe it. So by the time that email arrived in Kandahar, the subject line let us be adults about this. The PDF attachment ending my marriage. I wasn't blindsided. Not really. It still hurt like hell. But somewhere deep down, I had already been bracing for the impact. And while Becky thought she was pulling the trigger on me, she had no idea I'd already fortified my defenses. Because betrayal doesn't just end a marriage. It ignites a fire. And mine was just getting started. Here, the tension sharpens. David is already reeling from Becky's coldness and the divorce email, but now he starts uncovering the financial side of the betrayal. Drained accounts, suspicious spending, and the creeping realization that this isn't just a marriage ending. It has a deliberate setup to leave him stranded. This section should feel like a tightening vice, betrayal turning into outright theft. When you're deployed, Money is the last thing you want to worry about. Food, housing, medical care. The army covers it. So you trust your spouse to handle the home front. Pay the bills, keep the lights on. Make sure there's something to come back to. For 15 years, that's what Becky did. I'd wire money home, and she'd take care of it. Simple. But 3 weeks after that PDF divorce, I logged into our joint account. Not because I needed to, but because something in me twisted, urging me to check. What I saw nearly made my heart stop. The balance was down by half. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Maybe the system lagged. Maybe I fat-fingered the password. I logged out, logged back in. Same result. Thousands gone. I scrolled through the transaction history. That's when my blood ran cold. Nordstrom, Sephora, Gucci, a string of charges at upscale restaurants, ones we'd never been to together, a weekend stay at a resort 3 towns over, and a $4,500 wire transfer to an account I didn't recognize. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't paying bills. Becky was bleeding us dry. I slammed the laptop shut and sat there on my cot, fists trembling. The barracks around me buzzed with the usual chaos. Boots stomping, soldiers laughing, someone blasting metallic on a Bluetooth speaker. But all I could hear was the rush of blood in my ears. I wanted to scream, to punch a wall, to demand answers. But anger doesn't solve problems. Not in combat, not in marriage. So I forced myself to breathe, slow and steady, and opened the laptop again. I pulled up my other account, the one Becky didn't know about. Thank God I'd started it months before. The balance was modest, but intact. My safety net, I moved quickly, transferring the next 2 paychecks straight into it. Then I locked the account with 2-factor authentication. New passwords, everything. Becky wasn't touching this. But the joint account, I couldn't close it from overseas. And worse, her name was on it, which meant she had free reign, and she was using it. 2 days later, I checked again. Another $3,000 gone. A second mysterious wire transfer. More luxury shopping. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was furnishing the house. Maybe she was paying off some debt she hadn't told me about. Maybe no. I shut down that line of thinking fast. This wasn't about maybe. This was about betrayal. When soldiers get letters from home, they usually light up. For us, mail day is Christmas morning. But when my name was called, and the sergeant tossed me a padded envelope, my stomach turned. It was from Becky. Inside, a manila folder. Divorce paperwork. Legal forms, asset declarations, property splits. She'd filled them out already, neatly typed, with little sticky notes telling me where to sign. One note read, "Let's not drag this out. Be an adult. Sign and send back." My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. She'd listed the joint account as her asset, the house as community property. My pension, which I wasn't even close to collecting, flagged for division. She wanted it all, not just out of the marriage. Out with the money, the house, the future. That night, I sat under the dim yellow bulb of a desk lamp, staring at those papers. I thought about the years I'd spent in uniform, the birthdays I'd missed, the Christmases celebrated over crackly satellite calls, all the sacrifices I'd made so Becky could have a comfortable life. And here she was, gutting me while I was halfway around the world. But I didn't sign. I slid the folder back into the envelope and shoved it under my cot. Because something inside me had shifted. At first, the betrayal had stunned me. Then it had gutted me. Now it sharpened me. I started watching. Every few days, I logged into the joint account, and every time, more money was gone. Thousands bleeding away. Into accounts I couldn't trace. I kept records, screenshots, notes, dates, amounts, evidence, and while Becky thought she was dismantling me, I was building a case brick by brick. The more I dug, the uglier it got. I discovered a credit card opened in my name, maxed out on designer handbags and electronics. I found a personal loan application with my social security number typed neatly at the top. A loan ID never applied for. Identity theft. Fraud. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. This was war. One night, lying awake in the heat of Kandahar, I replayed Becky's words in my head. Be an adult. Sign and send back. I almost laughed. She thought she'd cornered me, that she could strip me clean while I was trapped overseas, unable to fight back. But here's the thing about soldiers. We don't just survive battles, we adapt, we strategize. And when we strike hard. So I made myself a promise under that Afghan sky. I'd come home quietly, calmly. No fireworks, no confrontation. But when the time was right, Becky would realize she hadn't outsmarted me. She'd walk straight into my ambush. War zones teach you something about the human mind. There are 2 types of people when the world collapses around them. The ones who break and the ones who bend, sharpen, and come back harder. For weeks after Becky's email, I'd been drifting. My mind stuck in loops of why and how could she. I de-checked the joint account like a man prodding a fresh wound, watching the balance bleed, knowing I couldn't stop it. But one night, something snapped. Not in rage, not in despair, in clarity. It was a Tuesday, I remember, because Tuesdays meant night patrol. We were staged outside the wire, engines idling, desert air, thick with dust. My guys were joking, spitting sunflower seeds into the dirt, adjusting gear. I sat in the Humvee, staring at a map spread across my lap, and for the first time, the thought hit me. Why am I treating this marriage like a battlefield I already lost? Back home, Becky thought she was in control. She had the money, the house, the narrative. She thought I'd roll over, sign papers, and hand her my future on a silver platter. But she'd forgotten something. She wasn't the only one playing a game, and unlike her, I was trained for this. In combat, strategy isn't about strength, it's about patience, knowing when to wait, when to strike, and how to let the enemy expose themselves. So I stopped reacting. I made 3 rules for myself. Don't confront, don't question, don't give her any sign I knew what she was doing. Let her think I was broken, compliant, distracted by deployment. Every withdrawal, every fraudulent loan, every credit card statement, digital screenshots, time-stamped notes. Facts don't lie, and facts win wars. Quiet entry, controlled actions. No storming into the house screaming. No rash decisions. I would land like a ghost, and by the time she realized I was back, the trap would already be set. Once I laid down those rules, something in me changed. The weight in my chest eased. My anger, once a wildfire, cooled into something sharper. Purpose. Even the guys in my unit noticed. One of them, a young sergeant named Lopez, pulled me aside after patrol. "You good, man? You've been different." I smirked, focused. He nodded slowly, like he didn't get it but trusted me anyway. And the truth was, he was right. For the first time since Becky's email, I wasn't drowning. I was calculating. I started a notebook. Black, hardcover, the kind you could shove in your ruck and no one would look twice. On the first page, I wrote one word: Operation Homefront. Every soldier loves an acronym. So I gave it one. OH1. Mission return, undetected. Assess target movements, neutralize threats, secure assets. Sounded dramatic, sure, but writing it like an op order flipped a switch in my brain. This wasn't personal chaos anymore. It was a mission. I mapped it out. Step 1. Banking trail. Keep monitoring the joint account. Track spending patterns. Identify suspicious transfers. Step 2. Paper trail. Document every fraudulent loan or credit card application. Don't just screenshot. Notarize when possible. Back up evidence to secure cloud storage. Step 3. Legal prep. Research divorce law in my home state. Understand community property. Division of assets. What courts look for in cases of fraud. Step 4. Intelligence gathering. Who was Becky spending all this money with? Where was it going? No one wires thousands to random accounts for fun. Step 5. Execution plan. Upon return, stay off Becky's radar. Don't announce leave dates. Land, get lawyered up, and move in silence. And then came the question I hadn't wanted to face. Who was she doing this with? The restaurant tabs, hotel stays, luxury splurges. They weren't solo. Becky wasn't blowing money alone. Someone was with her. At night, lying on my cot, I replayed faces in my mind. Neighbors, friends, people we knew from the base. Jeremy, Spencer. The names popped into my head like landmines waiting to detonate. Jeremy, the family friend who always had one too many drinks at our barbecues, who Becky laughed a little too hard with. Spencer, her coworker, always just helping her with projects. I hadn't wanted to believe it before. But now, the dots started connecting. The unexplained absences. The phone turned face down. The girl nights out that never added up. I clenched my jaw and wrote both names in the notebook. Circled them. Targets. By the time my deployment wound down, OH1 had filled 20 pages. Flowcharts, every detail sharpened like the edge of a bayonet. And when I closed that notebook and slid it into my ruck for the last time, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Calm. Because Becky thought she was dismantling me while I was away. But the truth was, every dollar she stole, every fraudulent form she filed, every lie she spun, was another nail in her own coffin. And when I came home, I wouldn't need to raise my voice. I'd let the evidence speak louder than any scream. The wheels hit the tarmac. And for the first time in over a year, I was back on American soil. No fanfare, no reunion crowd, just a duffel bag slung over my shoulder and a silence I carried like armor. Normally, soldiers get a hero's welcome. Balloons, hugs, kids, screaming daddy, but not me. Becky had made sure there would be no one waiting, no family, no homecoming banners. And that was fine, because ghosts don't get parades. I didn't tell Becky my return date. She thought I was still overseas for another 2 weeks, and I intended to use that to my advantage. Instead of heading home, I checked into a modest motel on the outskirts of town. Not the kind of place anyone would think to look for me. A flickering neon sign, peeling wallpaper, the faint smell of cigarettes in the carpet. Perfect. From there, I began phase 1 of OH1. Stealth re-entry. The first call I made wasn't to Becky, it was to a lawyer. I'd spent months studying divorce law. But reading articles in a desert tent and sitting across from a seasoned attorney were two very different things. Her name was Karen Holt. Sharp eyes, sharper voice, the kind of woman who could slice through deception like a hot knife. I laid everything out: the sudden divorce PDF, the drained accounts, the suspicious loans, and the names Jeremy and Spencer. I even slid my black notebook across her desk. She flipped through the pages, her expression hardening with each note. "Mr. Carter," she said finally, leaning back, "what your wife has done isn't just grounds for divorce. It's grounds for criminal charges. Fraud, conspiracy, possibly even money laundering, depending on where those funds went." I clenched my fists under the table, hearing it confirmed by someone else. That I wasn't crazy, that Becky had crossed into actual crime, was both infuriating and oddly satisfying. Karen tapped the notebook. "If we play this right, we can nail her and her little friends to the wall. But you need to keep quiet. Don't tip your hand. Let her think she's in control." I smiled, a cold, steady smile. "That's the plan." Phase 2, Recon. Late one evening, I drove past my old house. My house. The porch light was on. Becky's car parked in the driveway. But beside it sat another car, a black sedan I recognized instantly. Jeremy's. I parked half a block away, engine off, and just watched. Through the blinds, I could see movement. Becky in the kitchen, wine glass in hand, laughing. Jeremy leaned against the counter like he owned the place. My chest burned, but I didn't move. Rage would have been easy. Kicking down the door. Screaming. Demanding answers. But ghosts don't scream. Ghosts observe. I snapped a few photos with my phone. Time-stamped, geotagged, evidence. Over the next week, I built a quiet case. Becky meeting Spencer at a downtown cafe. Sliding envelopes across the table. Jeremy using my tools in the garage, like he'd already replaced me. Bank statements showing fresh transfers, each one tightening the noose. Every detail went into the notebook, every photo into a secure cloud folder. The hardest part wasn't gathering intel. It was staying invisible. There were nights I parked down the block, watching shadows move inside what used to be my living room. Nights I clenched the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, because part of me still wanted to storm in and demand why. But another part of me, the soldier, the strategist, reminded me of the bigger picture. This wasn't about a screaming match. This was about ending it once and for all. Karen and I met again after I'd collected 2 weeks of evidence. She flipped through the new files, her eyebrows lifting. "This is gold," she muttered. "The loans, the transfers, the cozy little meetings with Jeremy and Spencer. You've built a timeline of conspiracy. If we hand this to the right authorities, they won't just be facing divorce, they'll be facing prison." She paused, looking at me carefully. "Are you ready for that?" For her to be ruined, I didn't hesitate. She ruined us the moment she sent that email. This is just the reckoning. Phase 3. Control the battlefield. With Karen's help, I froze what little money was left in our joint accounts. I filed for divorce on my terms, citing fraud and marital misconduct. Becky hadn't even realized yet, still thinking she had the upper hand. And the best part, because she didn't know I was back, she couldn't adjust her game. She couldn't hide evidence, couldn't cover her tracks. She was still operating like I was 7,000 miles away. The night before the hammer dropped, I sat in my motel room staring at the notebook. Operation Homefront had gone from an idea scribbled in the desert to a near-complete mission. But there was one phase left. Exposure. Becky thought she'd built a new life. Jeremy by her side, Spencer pulling strings in the shadows. But in less than 24 hours, the walls would close in. And when she finally realized I was home, it wouldn't be because I walked through the front door. It would be because the FBI knocked on hers. The first crack in their facade came from something small. Karen had subpoenaed a set of bank records linked to Becky's business expenses. She slid the folder across her polished mahogany desk like it was a loaded gun. "Notice anything?" she asked. I scanned the statements. Transfers to shell accounts. Withdrawals from unfamiliar banks. Cashier's checks issued in Becky's name, endorsed by someone else. The amounts weren't pocket change either. 5,000 here, 8,000 there, all bleeding out over months. "This isn't just her," I muttered. "This is organized." Karen leaned back, tapping her pen, "And we're going to find out who she's tied to. Because this doesn't look like a lonely housewife rebelling. This looks like she stepped into a network." That's when the FBI came into play. Through Karen's connections, I met with Special Agent Lewis, a man who looked like he'd been born in a suit. No nonsense, square jaw, eyes like a hawk that never blinked. He listened as I laid out my notebook. The timelines, the photos, the transfers. When I finished, he steepled his fingers and said, "Mr. Carter, what you've described matches the profile of a regional fraud ring we've been tracking. Your wife and her associates may be small players, but if they're connected to Jeremy Spencer, they're moving stolen funds." "Stolen?" I asked. Silence stretched between us until she whispered, "You're enjoying this." I leaned forward, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "Enjoying? No, but I'll tell you what I am, Becky. I'm satisfied, because every step that brought you here, I was watching. Her eyes widened. The notebook you never saw, I continued. The bank records, the photos, every late-night drive when you thought no one was looking, I collected it all. I handed it to Karen. I handed it to the FBI. I pulled the thread that unraveled your little empire. Tears spilled down her cheeks, raw and silent. I pressed my palms together, breathing evenly. You thought you ended our marriage in a PDF, but Becky, I ended it in a courtroom, and I made sure you'd never profit from the ruins. Her composure broke then. She sobbed openly, shoulders shaking, begging with her eyes for mercy. David, please, she whispered. I made mistakes, but you can't mean to just destroy me like this. We had 11 years together. Doesn't that mean anything? I stood slowly, the chair scraping against the tile. It did, I said. And then you traded it for a duffel bag full of stolen cash and the arms of a coward. I leaned down, close enough for her to see the steadiness in my gaze. You asked me once, in that PDF, to be an adult about this. Well, Becky, this is me being an adult. Actions have consequences. And now, you get to live with yours. I turned and walked out before she could respond, her sobs echoing off the sterile walls. The trap had been sprung. Jeremy and Spencer faced federal charges, their assets seized, their futures erased. Becky's name was tied to their crimes. Whether she cut a deal or served her time, her reputation was ruined. And me, I signed the final divorce papers with a steady hand. Karen congratulated me, but I didn't celebrate. Revenge isn't champagne and confetti. It's a quiet, heavy satisfaction, the kind that sits in your chest like a stone. I'd gotten my closure. Becky finally knew the truth. I hadn't just survived her betrayal. I'd dismantled it, piece by piece, until there was nothing left of the life she tried to build without me. That night, I drove north, away from the city lights, into the mountains where the air was crisp and clean. As the stars stretched across the sky, I thought about the life ahead, one built not on betrayal, but on hard-earned peace. For the first time in years, I slept without waking in the middle of the night, waiting for the sound of betrayal at the door. Because the war was over, and I had won, the courthouse steps were cold beneath my boots the day the judge signed the final decree. Papers shuffled, signatures scrawled, and just like that, 11 years of marriage condensed into a stack of legal documents. No fanfare, no tears, just a quiet end. Karen shook my hand firmly. It's done. She can't touch you anymore. The accounts are secure. Your pension is safe, and you walk away free. Free. The word hung in my mind as I tucked the divorce papers into my bag. For months, I'd lived with the weight of betrayal pressing down on me like body armor. Now, for the first time, I felt it begin to lift. The move north, I didn't stay in the city long. Cities felt suffocating. Too many shadows, too many reminders of what I'd lost. Instead, I drove north, through endless stretches of pine and open sky, until I found myself in Montana. The land was rugged, unpolished, but honest. Mountains rose in the distance, rivers cut through the valleys, and the nights were silent except for the wind whispering through the trees. I bought a small cabin near Flathead Lake. Nothing fancy, just wood and stone, a fireplace, and a porch that looked out over the water. The realtor asked, "You looking for solitude or a fresh start?" I answered, "Both." Rebuilding a life, those first few weeks were strange. No uniform, no orders, no deployment clock counting down, just me, the quiet, and the steady rhythm of chopping wood, fishing in the mornings, and learning how to breathe again. I started journaling, not just the facts, like I had in my deployment notebook, but feelings, things I hadn't let myself process when I was in survival mode. Anger, grief, relief, page after page, I poured it all out. Sometimes, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, certain I'd hear Becky's voice or see Jeremy's smirk, but the only thing waiting for me was the crackle of the fire. Slowly, the nightmares dulled. News from the outside every now and then. Karen would call with updates. Jeremy and Spencer, convicted on federal charges, wire fraud, conspiracy, money laundering. They wouldn't see daylight for decades. Becky, she'd cut a deal, but it wasn't pretty. Her cooperation bought her fewer years behind bars, but she'd carry a felony record forever. Employers would see her name and look the other way. She'd lost her nursing license, her savings, her reputation. "She asked about you once," Karen said during one call. I raised an eyebrow, though she couldn't see it. "What did she want?" Karen's voice softened. "She wanted to know if you'd ever forgive her." I stared out at the lake, the sun glinting off the ripples. "Forgiveness is tricky," I said. "It doesn't mean letting someone back into your life. It just means letting go of the hold they had over you. A different kind of peace." One evening, I sat on the porch, watching the sunset bleed orange and purple across the horizon. A mug of coffee steamed in my hands, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel restless. The cabin was quiet, but it wasn't the suffocating silence of betrayal. It was the silence of peace. Neighbors, ranchers and fishermen mostly, started to wave when they saw me in town. A couple invited me over for Sunday dinner. I found myself laughing again, real laughter, the kind that shakes something loose inside you. And in those moments, I realized revenge hadn't made me bitter. It had freed me. Lessons carved in stone. Looking back, I knew I'd never get those 11 years back. I'd never erase the image of a PDF divorce arriving in my inbox halfway across the world. But I'd gain something else: clarity. I learned that betrayal doesn't define you, it defines the betrayer. I learned that strength isn't about carrying the heaviest load, it's about knowing when to set it down. And I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't fire or fury. It's building a life so solid, so unshakable, that the people who tried to break you become nothing but a distant echo. Final words to Becky. Sometimes, when the fire burns low and the night stretches long, I imagine Becky sitting alone in a cell. I wonder if she thinks about me, about the life we built and the way she torched it for greed. And in those quiet moments, I whisper the words I never got to say face to face. You didn't destroy me, you forged me. And I hope, in that silence, you finally hear the sound of what you lost. Outro for the audience. So that's how it ended. Not with a fight in the desert, not with gunfire or explosions, but with paper trails, patience, and a plan that turned betrayal into justice. If you've ever been betrayed, you know the temptation to burn everything down. But sometimes the smartest move isn't rage, it's strategy. It's letting your enemies trip over their own lies, while you quietly set the stage for their downfall. None of us should carry the weight of betrayal alone. If you felt this story in your heart, hit like, share it with friends, and leave a comment about what you would have done in my place. Your voice matters here. And if you haven't yet, subscribe, so you never miss a story of betrayal, revenge, and redemption.